So for starters, let's talk about one of the simplest, most inexpensive tools. This is just a hobby store or hardware store soldering iron, and you can get it with, they come in packs of different tips. You can actually get them at craft stores too. I like this one. This is actually a Weller, and the nice thing about it is it comes with this little stand, and you'll soon realize how important that is, especially if you're working on, say, a wood table or a plastic table. I've got this is a black cloth as a backdrop, but this is actually a plastic table, and so you don't want to lay the thing down or accidentally touch the tip on plastic or wood, and so it's really nice to have something. And you can do this thing. You could take an aluminum can and squash it and just stick it on top of that, or if you've got some other ceramic, maybe a ceramic cup you could stick it in. So be that as it may, there's these different tips, and one thing I wanted to show you is this tip here is pretty mucked up. It's pretty dirty. That's a real problem with wood burning. What you want is a nice clean tip, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some sandpaper, and we're going to clean a tip. Now, when you buy a soldering iron or a wood burning tool, sometimes they call them different things, at a craft store or hardware store, what you find, or what you don't realize, is the tips actually have little metal burrs on them, and so it's good to sand them down. This one's a little dirty, as you can see. Oops. So anyway, so as you realize that when you sand them down, it cleans them up, gets any metal burrs off them. So I'm going to use some fine sandpaper, and we're going to clean up a tip real quick. So I got the birds helping me in the background for effect, but anyway. Okay, so here I'm just cleaning the tip, kind of sanding it down, and you can see the lines on the sandpaper just kind of pulling off some of the stuff. And little by little, you can see that tip is getting cleaner. And there again, like I say, that's important, and we might want to do the sides a little bit. And this shouldn't take a long time. This is just it's just kind of a maintenance thing. What's that? 10-15 seconds. Okay, and then that tip is ready to wood burn. So compare that to, say, this tip that maybe you've done some soldering with or stuff, and you can see how you're not going to be able to control your lines and your flow of the heat with a tip that's like that. Here's another tip that's just a flat tip. Now I've actually taken different flat shaped tips, and I've actually taken tips and I've modified them myself, and bent them, squashed them, banged on them, and then just it'll do different lines and different effects on the wood. So next I'm going to talk about a more advanced version of a wood burner, and this is for someone who has more money or more serious about doing their wood burning. This is a razor tip SSD10, and some features about this, and what's nice is it has of course your on-off switch, and it has a rheostatic control, so you can actually control the amount of heat that flows through the tips, which is really nice because sometimes you want to burn really hot for things that are darker and closer to you, and sometimes you want cooler shading areas like blurry clouds in the background or trees or something. And the nice thing about this particular unit is it has the option of using an A or B side. So what happens is there's a cord, that's attached, and you plug it in, okay, and then you plug it into a tip at the other end, and then you can actually do two of them, and there's holders on both sides. And what happens is you can run two pens at the same time, so you don't have to stop like the other wood burner. You have to stop, let it cool down, take that tip out, put another tip in, plug it back in, and away we go. And that's the other thing, is you got to keep plugging and unplugging. Whereas this, you plug it in and you just turn it on or off. So this has a lot of advantages. You can go online, there's different people selling them. So, and then let me just show you some of the tips. Okay, for example, this is a writing tip, and it has the ball on the end. These come in different sizes. If you go on the website and see, here's a tip called a knife. Now you can actually cut with this tip. You can cut plastic, you can cut different things with it, but you can also do really sharp lines, like hair. Like for example, you see the tiger here, and they use a combination of shading and lines. You can do a little bit of shading with this, but it's real tough. Most of the heat is concentrated on the tip. I'm going to show you one more tip, and this is probably the one that I use the most. Ready? Brrr, drum roll, here it comes. Okay, after that awesome drum roll, here's the tip that I use probably the most. This is a shading tip, and they come in different sizes as well. The nice thing I like about this is the bend. You can actually change the bend a little bit. See the edge on the tip? Okay, you can actually do some of the same things you can do with the knife tip, because it has that edge to it, right? And so that's kind of cool, because you can do, in a pinch you can do some lines just here and there, maybe some, like on the cat, maybe some, whiskers or some hair, and then you flip it over and you do some shading. So this is what I consider more of a universal tip. I write my name on the art I do, and I do some heavier lines and stuff with this ball tip, but it's not as versatile as these others. Now these are fixed tip pins. In other words, when you buy the pin, okay, that's what you get. So when the tip, something breaks on it, these are about $25-30 a piece, but they last a long time. Very heat controlled. And the thing is if that tip breaks, you have to replace the whole pin. They also have replaceable tip pins, so that this piece, the piece on the end, actually comes out. So you can actually buy a pin, and these are actually heavy duty with the nice heavy foam end, so your hands don't heat up. You're still going to feel heat, but you'll last a lot longer with something like this. The soldering iron plastic, well, that heats up and you're going to feel it, and so you can only do wood burning for so long. But these give you that extra time frame. Also, with the replaceable tips, they're cheaper, and you only need one pen. The disadvantage is they don't hold up as long, and you're taking them in and out and in and out, so that's kind of a disadvantage. So I personally, for me, I think the extra money spent on a fixed tip pen is better off. And like I say, these are three that I use a lot. And if you go to my website, firefingerart.com, you can see some varieties done with both the soldering iron and these pens. So let's move on, and we'll look at transferring our image. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention before we move on to transferring is I still clean my tips with the sandpaper, and I'll tell you why. Because residue builds up when you're wood burning a lot. You'll get residue that builds up on these tips, and they still have to be cleaned and maintained. But really, just a few seconds of kind of sanding it down, and you'll notice a big difference.